His first camp media session, Ravens coach John Harbaugh passionately defended Lamar Jackson, asked about the criticism directed at the NFL's reigning most valuable player for not reaching the Super Bowl. John Harbaugh delivered an emotional 2-minute, 43-second response, and here is the best of that.
There's a lot of great things said about Lamar, but there's a lot of stuff that's said that you got to just scratch your head about and kind of wonder, what's that person even thinking, you know? So, but we take it personally. What does he have to do to prove himself to some people, right? Vision that we have together is that Lamar Jackson is going to become and be known and be recognized as the greatest quarterback ever to play in the history of the National Football League. That's the vision, all right? It's going to happen by Lamar, his work ethic, and his brilliant talent, by all of us pouring into that effort together as a team, teamwork, and by the grace of God and God's goodwill.
Wow.
Okay.
Rachel, do you like or have a problem with what John Harbaugh said about Lamar?
I absolutely have a problem with what he said. Try being the greatest quarterback of your era before you worry about being the greatest quarterback of all time. Lamar Jackson has had some incredible regular seasons, but Patrick Mahomes has already won multiple Super Bowl rings, right? And that is before we even get to Montana or Brady, of course, and all of those things. I know John really well. He is a rah-rah guy. He supports his players, but sometimes that can be to a fault because you create an unrealistic expectation if you talk that grand. Now, I do agree with him about what he said about some of the critics and not being right about that. I am mystified by the fact that just because Lamar Jackson isn't the best quarterback in the NFL, there's a whole contingent of people who think, oh, he's trash. If he's not the best, he's trash. And I know his postseason record hasn't been strong so far. He's 2-4. The man caught his own pass in a playoff game last season. He scored the only touchdown the Ravens had, even though the whole team played pretty sloppily. So I just think that we need to have perspective on Lamar Jackson on both sides of the equation. John needs to have a little bit more perspective with what he's talking about, and the critics of Lamar need to have more perspective too, because he isn't, in my mind, he's a top 3 quarterback in the league.
Well, as a former athlete, this wasn't about saying, even though he said he could be the greatest of all time and become that, this was not about his stats or his accolades or the possibility of winning 6 or 7 Super Bowls. This was a mental thing for his quarterback and believing in him. You know how disappointed Lamar was losing at home last year as Super Bowl favorites? This is about the psyche of the game, and this is what coaches do. I truly believe it. Does Jim Harbaugh think he's going to be the GOAT one day or could be the GOAT? You know what? I don't know. I'm not going to say no to it because when I see Tom Brady play till 45, it tells me that quarterbacks and players are playing longer. And, you know, I know Lamar plays a different pace than Tom Brady because he takes more hits. I get it. He's only 27, so he still has a ways to go. But for me, this was psychological for his quarterback. And like I said, I don't know if he can become the GOAT. He has 2 MVPs. The stats are there. His records are there. The Super Bowls are not there. And for him to pass Tom Brady, he's going to have to win 7 or 8, or let's say he wins 5 and a couple more MVPs and the stats are there. Who knows? But psychologically, I love what Coach Harbaugh is doing because the same thing, you know, about Jason Tatum was said a year ago, all the negativity surrounding him. What did he go out and do this year? Him and Jaylen Brown went out and won a championship. And so all those things are going to get erased, and he'll be right on the right path to becoming that. Does he have the tools? Absolutely. And some of the things that the great traits that I noticed he said, he takes it personally. You know, his work ethic. Those are traits to becoming one of the greatest. So sometimes, Skip and Rachel, you may not reach your goal of being the GOAT, but if you aim high, you can come close. And I just think that's his goal. He's aiming high, and he's installing that into his quarterback. And as an athlete, you know, I aim to be MVP of the league. I aim to be this. I never accomplished that, but I became better than I was supposed to be, maybe, because I aim so high. So I love what Jim Harbaugh did.
There's a difference between wanting to be MVP in a specific year and greatest of all time.
Yeah, true for that. True that. True that.
Just for the record, Steve Young recently said Lamar has the tools to become the greatest ever.
Yeah.
Okay, I get it. Nobody has defended Lamar harder than I have sitting right here in this seat. But what I can't defend is 2 and 4. I just can't, because 3 of those 4 losses came at home.
Yep.
And 2 of those losses came with the number 1 seed after you went 14-2 in 2019 and was MVP, and then 13-4 last year. You just can't defend that, because he's the youngest ever to win 2 MVPs, age 27. So way to go, especially because nobody saw you coming out of college.
Yeah.
And yet I look at the overall performance in the postseason, and he's 57% completion. It's just not, that's not MVP. It's not good enough. He's 6 touchdowns to 6 interceptions. It's not MVP quality. He's lost 3 fumbles in those 6 games. It happens, but it's not great. So I picked them last year to win it all.
I did,
and
too.
I believed in them body and soul, man. And I still cannot shake off that they lost at home to Mahomes, because I did not think Kansas City was on enough of a roll. Kansas City barely got out of Buffalo alive. And then they come out and play like that in the first half, and they won the game in the first half because they had to kind of just sit on that lead. And to defend Lamar, even though he did not put up MVP quality numbers in that game, he did throw what sure looked like a touchdown pass to start the 4th quarter that would have cut it to 17-14. We have it to Zay Flowers. And L'Jarius Sneed made the play of the playoffs, you could argue, and he dislodged it at the goal line.
That was heartbreaking.
He dislodged it. That cuts it to 17-14. Do they go on to win? I think so, but that, you want to talk about ripping your heart out at the goal line? And how L'Jarius Sneed is not still on the Kansas City Chiefs is another story that I don't understand. But don't get me started on that. They let him go to Tennessee. But here we go. So when you're talking about the greatest ever, at points, John came off as a delusional dad, like we were talking about in the last segment, right? And he finally went grace of God. Well, it's going to probably take a little grace of God to get there. But he has all the potential in the world to pull this off. And I do believe he will win a Super Bowl. I'm not going to say he's going to win 8 or 9 or whatever, but he's going to win a Super Bowl before he's finished. And listen, as you both know, just one Super Bowl, it is hard, man.
It's hard to win.
Yeah,
Yes.
Go ahead.
Look, I think that he will win a Super Bowl. Again, I am a huge supporter of Lamar Jackson. I think that the way he has played since he got in the league proves a lot to a lot of people who thought he should switch positions and all of this stuff.
Yeah, we went from switch positions to 2 MVPs before 27. Go
Exactly.
ahead.
No. And again, to me, he is a top 3 quarterback in the league, depending on where you put Josh Allen and all of that kind of stuff. But he's definitely
I'll buy that
in there
for sure.
And his team is one of the 5 favorites to win the Super Bowl. And that's largely because of him also. All that being said, the greatest of all time, to me, is not something you can throw around. No. That's the hardest thing to do, literally, in your sport.
Yeah.
And the idea that there's been a lot of great quarterbacks that have come and gone over the years who didn't win the greatest quarterback of all time title. And by the way, even once you have been considered that, like Joe Montana was for 2 decades, someone else can come along, like Tom Brady, and take that mantle from you. So I just think that, yes, he's trying to give his player confidence. Most of what he said, I totally back. But to me, he went too far. You just said, Paul, he said, let's say he wins 5 Super Bowls. That's not something you can just hand wave.
No.
That is almost, I mean, it's not impossible because we've seen Tom Brady, but Joe Montana didn't win 5 Super Bowls.
You got to start early, though. You got to start early.
Yeah.
So he's a little behind the clock, but he got time.
Here's the other problem I had with what John said, and I'm with you on John. I really admire John.
He's fantastic.
It's all psychological, Skip.
Okay, I got that.
It's all psychological.
But speaking of psychological, 2 years ago, they put Lamar as an organization through the ringer over his contract, and it got flat out ugly. And you can't tell me that the way the organization treated